So, 66 million years ago, a rock the size of a mountain just slammed into the Earth, and boom, the age of dinosaurs was over. But this isn't really a story about the end of the world. It's actually a story about what came next. This is the Paleogene period, and it might just be the greatest comeback story in the history of life. I mean, we all know the headline, right? A giant asteroid hits, a cataclysmic impact, and then nothing. Silence. But that's not where the story ends. Nope, that's where a brand new one begins. So, what really happened the day after the dinosaurs died? Let's dive in. To really understand the incredible world that rose from the ashes, we have to go back. We've got to visit the single darkest day in our planet's history. And this wasn't just the end of an era, you guys. It was a hard reset for all of life on Earth. And believe it or not, geologists have actually found the evidence of this catastrophe written right into the rocks. It's this thin, dark line of clay they called the KPG boundary. You look below this line and the world is just teeming with dinosaur fossils. But above it, an eerie quiet. It's literally the geological equivalent of crime scene tape, marking the exact moment an entire world just vanished. So, what caused this boundary? What was the murder weapon? Well, the culprit was an asteroid, and it's estimated to be a staggering 10 to 15 kilometers wide. To put that into perspective, just try to imagine something bigger than Mount Everest hurtling towards our planet at a speed so insane it could cross the Atlantic Ocean in just a few minutes. That is what was heading for the Yucatan Peninsula 66 million years ago. The impact itself was, well, it's basically unimaginable. The energy released was more powerful than over 10 billion Hiroshima-sized atomic bombs all going off at once. It was a day that completely and forever changed the course of life on this planet. And the extinction wasn't just one quick blow. Oh no, it was a slow, agonizing death for the planet. First, the sky went dark. A massive cloud of pulverized rock and debris blocked out the sun, plunging the world into a freezing, impact winter. Photosynthesis stopped, plants died, and the entire food chain just collapsed. Then, the world literally caught fire. A wave of heat from the impact ignited global wildfires, turning entire forests to ash. And finally, the rain started, but it wasn't water. It was toxic acid that poisoned the oceans and the land. And the result of all this? A world practically emptied of life. About 3/4 of every single species on Earth, gone. The dinosaurs who had ruled the planet for 160 million years were wiped out. A world that had been full of giants was now a world of ghosts. But here's the thing. Even in the absolute darkest of times, life, as they say, finds a way. 1/4 of all species somehow made it through the apocalypse. They were the small, the meek, the ones nobody really paid attention to, and they were about to inherit the Earth. So let's look at the roll call. The fallen were the titans of the old world, the mighty non-avian dinosaurs, the soaring pterosaurs, those monstrous sea reptiles. But the survivors? They were this motley crew of small, unassuming creatures, our furry little shrew-like ancestors, the actual descendants of dinosaurs, the birds, and some tough-as-nails reptiles and amphibians. So what was their secret? How did they pull it off? Well, for one, they were small, so they didn't need a lot of food. Many were burrowers or swimmers, so they could literally hide from the chaos raging on the surface. And maybe most importantly, they weren't picky eaters. They could survive on seeds, bugs, whatever they could find. In a world of scarcity, those were the traits that made you a winner. With the giants gone, the world was basically an open book. For these small, scrappy survivors, it was a once-in-a-planet's-lifetime chance to write a totally new chapter. And this, my friends, was the dawn of a new era, the age of mammals. Think about it like this. The world was suddenly full of job openings. All the roles once filled by dinosaurs, the giant plant eaters, the terrifying predators, the grazers, they were all vacant. And mammals and birds, they seized the opportunity. They started rapidly evolving into this dizzying array of new forms to fill every single empty niche. And this explosion of life produced some truly bizarre and wonderful creatures. You had giant, flightless terror birds stalking the plains, basically taking the place of T-Rex as top predators. Our own ancestors, the very first primates, showed up in the new forests. And in one of the weirdest twists in evolutionary history, some mammals decided to leave the land behind and head back to the sea, becoming the first whales. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? The world had been completely turned upside down. The long age of reptiles was finally over. The age of mammals had begun. Okay, so it's a fascinating story for sure. But you might be wondering, why does this ancient history still matter to us now? Well, it turns out the Paleogene holds some absolutely critical lessons for our own time. You see, the Paleogene wasn't just a single event. It was this long, dynamic period of massive change. It kicked off with a cataclysm that was followed by a period of intense global warming we call greenhouse Earth, and then it went into a long, slow cooling that would eventually lead to the ice ages. So why does this matter to us right now? Because we're living in a time of incredible change ourselves. By studying how life bounced back from one of the worst mass extinctions ever, we can learn how to protect our own world. By studying the greenhouse Earth period, we get a terrifying glimpse of what our own future could hold. And of course, this is where our own story begins, with the very first primates. The Paleogene isn't just a story about the past, it's a warning, and maybe a guide for our future. But honestly, we have only just begun to scratch the surface of this strange and wonderful new world. I mean, what was it actually like to live in a world so hot that crocodiles were swimming in the Arctic Circle? And what did the first whales, who still had legs and walked on land, even look like? The answers to those questions and so many more are out there waiting. This has really just been a quick look into the incredible world of the Paleogene, but there is so much more to the story. In our full guide to the Paleogene, you'll travel back in time to a world of absolute wonders. You'll feel the staggering heat of a greenhouse Earth. You'll witness the birth of the Himalayan mountains. You'll come face to face with the largest meat-eating mammal that ever walked the land. And you'll follow the incredible journey of the first whales as they leave land behind. It's an epic story of destruction and creation, of loss and renewal. So join us and discover the world that rose from the ashes. All right, let's do something a little different today. We're going to turn back the clock, way back, 66 million years, for a pop quiz. You think you know what happened after the dinosaurs? Well, let's put that to the test. Okay, so picture this. 66 million years ago, an asteroid, basically the size of a mountain, slams into the Earth. And just like that, poof. The 160 million year reign of the dinosaurs, it's over. A total catastrophe that left the world stage completely empty. But you know the old saying, right? Life finds a way. A brand new world, the Paleogene period, started to rise from the ashes. And that is where our quiz begins. So how many can you get right? Let's find out. Okay, round one. Let's start with the basics of this brand new era. We gotta set the scene, right? All right, first question. We know it all kicked off 66 million years ago, but how long did this new chapter actually last? Go on, have a guess. And the answer is, it spanned for over 40 million years, wrapping up around 23 million years ago. You gotta understand, this period is the super important bridge that connects the world of giant reptiles to, well, the world we know. All right, let's move on to question 2. Geologists, they just love their Greek roots, don't they? So what does Paleogene actually mean? Any ideas? It translates to period of old origin. And that's a pretty fitting name because this period gave birth to a whole new ruling class. With the dinosaurs out of the picture, the stage was totally set for the dawn of what we call the Age of Mammals. Okay, time for round 2. Let's get into who or what was running the show in this new world and what the climate was like. And trust me, things are about to get a little weird. So, the top predator spot was wide open. The T-Rex left some pretty big shoes to fill, right? So, what creature stepped up to take that fearsome role? Here's a hint for you. It wasn't a mammal. The answer? Gastornis, one of the absolutely incredible terror birds. We're talking about giant, flightless predators that stood over 2 meters tall. It just goes to show you, the avian descendants of the dinosaurs got really creative to fill that power vacuum. Now, this new world wasn't just run by different animals. It felt like a totally different planet. It was a complete hothouse. Seriously, almost no ice at the poles. So, what's the fossil evidence that proves this? Get this. The answer is crocodiles and palm trees. I'm not kidding. Scientists have found their fossils inside the Arctic Circle. That's just staggering proof of a massive ancient global heatwave, a true greenhouse Earth. All right, you ready for round 3?
It's time to put on our detective hats. We're about to solve maybe the biggest murder mystery in the history of the planet, the case of the dinosaur killer.
So, how did scientists actually crack this case? Well, it started with a clue. This weird, thin layer of clay they found in rocks all over the world. It's called the KP boundary. Then came the evidence. Inside that clay, they found crazy high levels of iridium, an element that's super rare on Earth, but really common in asteroids. And that, my friends, led them straight to the crime scene, the enormous 18-kilometer-wide Chicxulub crater down in Mexico. Yep, case closed. Okay, so we know who the victims were. But for our final round, let's talk about the survivors. I mean, how did anything manage to live through a global catastrophe like that? Tons of really successful species, like those spiral-shelled ammonites that were around for hundreds of millions of years. They were just gone, wiped out completely. So what were the two golden tickets to making it through the apocalypse? It really came down to two things: being small and being able to hide. See, smaller creatures didn't need as much food to get through the impact winter, and anything that could burrow underground or live in the water was shielded from the total hellscape up on the surface. It really wasn't about being the strongest, it was all about being the most adaptable. And that's it. That's the end of our quiz. So, what does it all mean? So how'd you do? Did you ace it? Even if you just learned something new, the big takeaway here is the same. The Paleogene period is just this powerful story, an incredible testament to life's ability to bounce back, even from the absolute worst disaster you can imagine. And you might be asking, why does this even matter? Well, because this is our origin story. This is the era that gave us the very first primates, swinging through the forests. It's when the ancestors of whales decided to head back into the sea. It literally set the stage for the evolution that, millions of years later, would lead right to us. Look, this little quiz barely scratches the surface. If you want the full story, I'm talking how little rat-like mammals evolved into giants, all the shocking details of that greenhouse Earth, and even how the Himalayas were born, you've got to check out our complete guide. And that just leaves us with one last thing to think about. If life on this planet could come roaring back with so much creativity and diversity after a literal planet-killing asteroid, what does that tell us about the nature of resilience itself? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining me.